Welcome, welcome, Miss Erica. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good out in Baltimore. How's the weather out there?
It is finally being kind to us because it's been very bipolar.
Yeah,
Not so bad today.
good, good. So I'm really excited to have you on today because the work that you do as a CHW is very unique. And so I know that people are going to get a lot of nuggets and have a lot of questions about the work that you do out in Baltimore. So you work as the violence prevention coordinator in Baltimore. What exactly does that entail?
I am a violence prevention coordinator for a program called Safe Streets here in Baltimore. And what we do is we work to curb violence in the community, change community norms, and prevent murders and homicides.
Very important work. Very important work. And how did you get involved in that type of work?
I actually started out in the hospital because there's a hospital-based program, and we were called hospital responders. So anyone who was shot, stabbed, or assaulted in the area where, at the time it was the hospital called Sinai, and brought in through the ER for a street violent act, which, like I say, is a shooting, a stabbing, or a violent attack. We will go to the bedside and offer assistance, be it advocacy, relocation, just the mental health support, whatever it was, we would help that person get back to some normalcy and make sure they were following up with their medical care after the violent incident. And then we did other things like community events to talk about violence and how we can help curb violence. So that's how I got into it in the hospital. And females, I was Baltimore's first female hospital responder because there was
Wow.
no such role. Um, there had been an upkick of street violent crime toward females, where females were actually the victims of shootings, stabbings, and assaults that weren't related to domestic violence. So I was their advocate, or I assisted the family members to males who had been shot, stabbed, or assaulted.
That's a big responsibility as a CHW. I mean, I'm sure you saw a lot. And being a CHW, the huge thing is that you know the community. So how were you able to work in that environment, but you kind of may know some people? How did you work that out?
Well, it's about building relationships, whether it be on the front end or the back end. So if
Mm-hmm.
people were coming in through the ER, a lot of times I didn't know them beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So it was basically having to build a relationship after the fact. And most of it was through advocacy. A lot of people that live in our poor communities have health disparities. And it was a lot dealing with people with that had been injured and pain, or injured and having to advocate for themselves when speaking to their doctors and their medical team. So that was how I built a lot of relationships, and then helping them navigate. Some of them couldn't return to their home because the incident happened near their home, and they were afraid. So I would have to speak to state's attorneys, talk to police officers about relocation. They would have to go to hotels, or they would have to relocate permanently altogether. So it was just still about building relationships, whether we knew each other before or we build a relationship and a rapport after.
And so, as a CHW, let's stay there for a minute and talking about building relationships. So, these people are going through a traumatic situation. They're afraid. Sometimes shame, comes in. You're ashamed of the situation that you are in. So, how were you able to connect people with other resources that they might need and really try to show them that you're on their side so that, they wouldn't miss your calls or they wouldn't want to open up to you? How were you able to do that?
Well, we know that one of the makeups of being a CHW is you're connected with the community. Some of these things you've been through personally, or you've advocated enough that you know how it works on the back end. So a lot of these things that a lot of our participants were going through, it was things that I had seen in the community or dealt with personally. So I could advocate for them on that end. Even if they had an appointment at social service, I would meet them at social service and help walk them through the process, and they will treat it way differently. So that right there alone, they're looking like, well, when I come by myself, they don't treat me like this. Or I do follow up. If they go to an appointment, I call them and ask them how the appointment went. Or before they go to an appointment, we talk about, okay, so what's this appointment about? It may be a pain management appointment. So do you have some questions that you're going to ask the doctor? Are you going to tell your doctor that you're in pain when you do X, Y, and Z? Make sure you mention that to them. Do you need me to be there with you? Make sure you write these questions down if you don't want me to be there with you. And you can be a voice for yourself. That's, so basically like that, just showing up and actually being there and helping them figure out the things that they may have overlooked or didn't even think they deserved. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't think that you go to the doctor and the doctor is actually supposed to listen to your concern, like listen to what I'm saying, and they're supposed to respond to that. So they basically just those things right there, and showing up for them, going to the bedside, either when they were in the ER or when they went to the floor. Some people I went to the floor. One of my female clients, the first time I met her, she was in a coma. Hmm. So she got shot in the chest. So the first time I met her, she was in a coma. I talked to her mom and her grandmom, and I worked with them for a few days before she actually woke up. And then I would just go up to the floor and talk to her, and I would tell her about the days that I would come up, and she didn't even know I was there. I was in a coma. So she was in a coma. So, after telling her these things and just showing up for her, she trusted me.
So what is the difference that the organization saw with you coming in as working with the females? Because you mentioned that there weren't any females working there prior to your arrival. So what are some of the different programs that you were able to implement and work with, and different things they were able to see over that time span?
So they realized they needed a female when they were getting more female victims, and they weren't necessarily receptive to males. Mm-hmm. So they saw that having a female was an asset. And then after I came on, and then I worked with the female victims and or assisted the female family member, because usually it was a female family member. It's more than likely it was a male that had gotten shot in the community or stabbed in the community, and he had a mother or wife or girlfriend or auntie that I would connect with. So bridging that gap, and then we had like community talkbacks where we would talk to the community about what the need was, and then go back to the table and work on filling what the need was. And just the fact that we weren't doing, nobody in Baltimore, no other hospital responder program in Baltimore had a female prior to that. It just became an asset. And how I built on it was I would have to explain to the guys like, okay, well, because she's the female, she's probably the direct caregiver to her children, which most of the time isn't a role that males play. So she may ask for X, Y, and Z, and that may be a part of her recovery plan. Or she may need so-and-so, which may not be a part of a recovery plan for a guy that you are usually working with. So things like that.
That's why this is so important. Like, this is why it's so important for us to talk about things like this, because there may be other organizations or other teams that haven't even thought about adding either a male or a female to their team. And we have to understand that people have different needs. And so until you're able to reach their needs, it's kind of like they're not listening to you. And you want to be able to help them in the way that they need assistance. So that's major that your organization brought you in to be able to serve the females in a way that helped them live their best quality of life. So the Safe Street initiative, can you kind of explain the location of the geographic area that you guys cover, how many people are on your team? Explain a little bit about that.
So my site is McElderry Park, which is, everybody knows Johns Hopkins all over the world. So we're not too far from Johns Hopkins Hospital. I can like walk to Johns Hopkins Hospital from my site. There are 10 sites altogether of Safe Streets, Baltimore. And in each site, there are a certain amount of posts that you all man in the community. And they're called violence interrupters. And what that basically is, if there's a beef or an argument or an escalation in the community, these interrupters will find out who the key individuals are, the participants, go to them and try and squash the beef.
Okay, can I stop you right there? For some people that truly may not know what that means, break that all the way down. Break it down. What's a beef?
So in the community, okay, say a fight, a little argument breaks out, and if we hear, sorry,
yeah, no worries. Hey, that's our first responders going to work. So hey, you know.
So, and if an argument or a disagreement breaks out, and it's just a verbal altercation, once the interrupters get word in the community that this happened, they'll go and gather more information to make sure it doesn't escalate to a shooting or a homicide.
Wow,
so
that's powerful.
They gather the information. They actually go out, contact the key individuals or people that know the key individuals, gather the story, and if need be, we will mediate. We'll bring both parties together and mediate to squash in the disagreement, the argument, so that it does not escalate again to a shooting, a murder, or a violent interaction.
So is this for a specific age range? Or does it not matter? Or
it used to be 14 through, let me look at my little key card, because it used to be age range of 14 to 26, but we've since taken the age cap off because we see that violence really has no age range. We know that 8, 9, and 10-year-olds can get possession of a handgun and it can escalate out of control very quickly. When we also know that older individuals can become key individual players, and that simple arguments can escalate out of control and lead to a violent act. So we've kind of taken the age cap off and just focus on whoever the key individuals are.
So is that something that you do, or do you just do more of the coordination part? Like, say that you hear about something and you go out into the community. So what would be the first step? If you're going to someone and you say, hey, I heard this is going on, are people receptive to that? Or what does that look like?
Good question. So the one of the makeups and the models of Safe Streets is that the responders are from the community. They used to once be contributors of bad behavior or violence in the community. So they have street cred. They are known individuals in their community, and they are able to gather information. They have established relationships. They do community engagement. So in the 4 posts, the guys usually live in that area, in that vicinity, in their posts. So that's how that works. And I do more of community engagement or organizing and planning, advocacy and finding jobs. The guys will bring the people in and we'll kind of devise a plan to help them out so that they don't go back out and want to be violent. I go out, when we do community events, and then we have a big center where we have a kitchen and the other side where you can work out. So pre-COVID, you used to could come in and you know, like hang out. We would have different kind of community events inside and meetings. Now most of them are outside. So we build community relationships so that they know that we are trusted members of the community.
Exactly. And that's so important. So do you see a mix of people come into your center, of youth, of their parents, of the grandparents? Because, and the reason I ask that is because I used to work in the after school program in South Dallas. And so the center that I worked at, it was also a recreational center. It was a clinic. It had everything together. And so we would see the entire family unit, you know, from mom, dad, grandmother, grandfather, everybody would come there at one point in time. So is that kind of similar to what you guys see?
Yep, we see everyone. Sometimes moms or dads will wander in like, hey, my son is involved in some stuff and I don't know how far it can go. Do y'all think y'all can help him? And then sometimes the kids will just come in and be like, you know, I need some help. What can y'all do for me? Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they just need somebody to talk to. Maybe they need help with a resume. So yeah, we
Why do
see
you think that's so important to offer services for everybody in the family? What are some benefits of that?
It builds better support. The family dynamic is made up of all different people, not just moms and dads. So if grandma sees a problem, we want grandma to know that we can support her through her decision of even asking for help for the grandchild. And it's all about community and family. Like if you aren't committed to helping the family as a whole, then most of the time it won't work, because sometimes you have to go to the leader or the head of the family and ask for permission to do certain things. So we want to make sure that they know that we're supporting them as well as whoever the individual and the actual participant is.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about your journey to become a CHW. So I know that prior to doing the work you do now, you were in the hospital, but in Baltimore, well, in Maryland, you guys just recently, a couple of years ago, went through the CHW process of being accredited CHW.
Yeah.
So what was your process like?
So when we met in Vegas at the conference,
Yeah.
Maryland had been a certified state yet.
Mhm.
So it was still some wording that doctors and nurses were going back and forth about CHW roles. So a lot of that stuff had to be unpacked, rewritten, go back to the table, you know, keep explaining to them what we do, showing them what we do before they felt comfortable enough to give us some language that made sense, that we all agreed with. And then we could start the certification process. I had already been a CHW for about 2 years. So I was kind of grandfathered in. So I just, you know, filled out the certification paperwork because I was already working in the CHW capacity in a hospital for X amount of years. By the time it, you know, it passed for us to finally have it. And my journey to CHW was, I've always been a CHW, I just wasn't paid for it.
Yeah, like so many of us. Yeah.
So I worked for MTA for about 8 years and I got hurt at work and I had to end up having 2 major surgeries. And then in between the time that I was out of work or off work before I was forced to retire, my mom and my bonus son were both diagnosed with cancer 6 months apart. My son, 16 at the time, leukemia in November, and then my mother that following April, stage 3 breast cancer. So I became a cancer caregiver, and those 3 back-to-back medical incidents in my life showed me that being an advocate over your own health was very important, because a lot of times medical doctors just don't listen, or they treat everyone the same, or they treat poor people and brown and Black people very differently. So I spent a lot of time being very vocal about how myself, my son, and my mom would be treated and what I expected of paid professionals. So when I saw the training course for CHW, for me to go back to work after 8 years, I said, that's the only thing that I'm going to do.
Wow. And look at you now. You are aligned in your purpose and doing what you love. I mean, I see you always sharing information, community information, out in Baltimore and doing the work that you do, which I think is so important. You know, as CHWs, people trust us in the community. They want to hear your advice. They come to you as a resource. So what's that transition been like now in a kind of virtual world, now that we've been in the pandemic versus always outreach, community outreach? What's that been like for you and your organization and the work you do?
Sometimes it's kind of difficult because you don't get the connection of human interaction, in-person human interaction. But it's also kind of been a plus because we can connect with each other anywhere. So a lot of times people don't show up to places because they just can't get there for whatever reason, be it they don't have bus fare or they just don't have access to transportation, so they just won't show up. Now we can basically meet each other anywhere. We can meet each other in bed. We can meet each other at the store. You don't have to stop your day to be like, oh, I'm gonna go to this meeting all the way across town. We can meet right sitting at your kitchen table. So it's kind of opened up the door to be more accessible. And you know, the pandemic has made us be very creative and innovative. And some of the things we may not have wanted to do, but it's been a great asset to be able to meet with each other anywhere and everywhere. Like,
I definitely agree. I think that even in the profession, in the field, a lot of us have become more tech savvy. We've been able to connect with more people. And so maybe there were some initiatives that some people wanted to do, but maybe they didn't have the resources to be able to do it, or they always said that's not going to work. Well, what you got to lose now? You might as well try if it's virtual. And the thing about it is that we're able to connect with so many other different people. Like the podcast, for instance, is to me, I believe that it is definitely a resource, but I mean, we have listeners in different countries, different continents. I mean, Africa, Australia, it's crazy. You don't know how your story can impact somebody. You have no clue. So the work that you're doing and that you're sharing with us, you could totally plant a seed in another country. You know, that's the beauty of embracing technology and embracing things that we may not be comfortable with. So I definitely encourage people, you know, you're not going to be the best at it at first, but hey, you know, make your mistakes and just keep going. Just keep going. So with so much that you do in the community, man, I mean, a lot. And I'm sure that people blow up your email, your text messages. You know, what are some of the projects and initiatives that you guys have been doing specifically during this pandemic to try to keep in contact with the community during this time?
Well, we plan safe social distance community events. So majority of the time it's just, sometimes it's like grab and go. Sometimes we just pass out pub ed rec cards like these right here to tell you about our program. We walk them down. We're on like a store strip. So I'll go to our store neighbors and leave cards for when customers come in. And then when we do community events, we kind of put out flyers in the community to let them know like what time and what the event is going to consist of. And we're also in process of getting a mobile job bus. So the mobile job bus
is a mobile joy bus?
Job bus.
Job bus. Oh, okay. Job. Oh, okay, got you. I said joy. Y'all gonna be spreading joy. Okay.
No, a mobile employment bus. So hopefully, well, it'll be in each four of our posts. And probably one day a week, we're going to be in each individual post. And of course, we're going to offer job opportunities and resumes and interviewing skills. But then whatever we find the need is when we actually get out there is what we're going to try and fill the gap for. So like for Christmas, I did a community event where we gave away toys, but I didn't want just any toys. I asked for board games because our children spend so much time now on the internet with school and virtual learning, and children like their phones and children like video games. And we're home anyway. So I was like, this would be a great opportunity to encourage family time with going back to them good old fashioned board games. So I encourage people to go to Five Below because they had either the actual board game or the mock-up of the board game. And then I asked for things for older children because during the holidays, it's always exciting to shop for the little kids. You like doll babies and you like action figures and all those things like that. And then our older kids are always left out. Like, I didn't get anything, or I don't want these little things. So what I asked for was like ideas where children can start expanding their entrepreneurship. Clippers, build hair bags for little girls, nail kits if they wanted to do nails, sewing kits. They had little things so you can make masks. They had pottery equipment. They had paint sets. So I asked for skates. I asked for skates, baking products. I was like, go to Dollar Tree and fill up a bag with baking goods because you might have a kid that wants to be a baker or a cook. So I just like think outside the box and make sure you think about things for older children and things that can expand them and help them hone in on their craft that they should be thinking about right now.
I love that. And it's so important because the more that they are exposed to different things and they see different things that they can be, it plants a seed. I am huge on exposure. My nieces and nephews know, I'm not the aunt that's gonna buy you everything, but I will take you on a trip. I will spend time with you. And and so I truly believe in that because it just exposes you to so many other things out there in the world. So what are some, go ahead.
That is also an opportunity. Sometimes we live vicariously through our children. So it's also an opportunity for parents to tap into those things that they may have missed out on in their youth. So, it's about the children, but it's also about adults trying to find their niche as well, because we're not grown, we're all growing. So we want to be able to, the pandemic should have taught you that you probably were in a position that you never want to be in again. And we want to be better after this. And that's everybody across the board. So that's just how I look at it. Sparking people's interest about a little bit of everything.
And that's important. It's definitely important. So caring for everybody is a lot. It can be a lot. What does your self-care look like, Erica?
Right now it's looking like empty. Right now I'm kind of in full go mode, and I find that doing things makes me feel better. It does. Even though you get tired and worn out, if I'm not doing something, then it zaps all of my energy. How strange is that? So right now I'm just focused on, I'm actually planning a vision book experience for Sundays, kind of like vision board on steroids. And I'm kind of excited about that. I'm planning a community cleanup in my community. And I've been testifying for the House bills for police reform and accountability. And again, that's just kind of, I'm using my gifts. So when I'm using my gifts, I feel like I'm most purposeful. Now I'm also working on a vacation and buying a home. So those things are the things that bring me joy, and spending time with my grandson, who will be 1 in a few weeks.
Who she always posts on. He's so cute, so cute. We definitely know you love that role a lot.
I do. Yes, I do.
So you mentioned police reform. What are your thoughts on police reform? What are your thoughts on how that, um, well, it fits right into the type of work you do, but what are your thoughts on police reform?
The need for transparency is way past due.
Mhm.
Baltimore City has a consent decree policy that is basically thousands of words on printed paper, and it's begging the police department to go back to following the law. And it came about because of the egregious acts against Freddie Gray, and it doesn't seem to have gotten any better since then. And the Police Officer Bill of Rights, which gives police officers an extraneous amount of protection, is outrageous. It's just outrageous. If we do something on our jobs, we would be reprimanded for it, and probably lose our jobs and go to jail. So we are just asking for more transparency and more accountability across the board, and not understanding what the fight and resistance is just doesn't make sense at this point. So it became a personal battle because a police officer pulled a gun on my son about 4 years ago in our suburban neighborhood in Howard County. He was a Baltimore City police officer. He was plain clothes and out of his jurisdiction, and he was basically harassing my son. And when my son asked to be left alone, he pulled his gun on him. So I have been fighting for accountability against this officer for about 4 years, and that's kind of what thrusted me into this arena. Anton's law was just on the books, which is that police officers that are dismissed from the force, that information follows them so that they can't move from county to county being rehired.
Mhm.
And
As it should.
exactly.
That's
And
my
the
opinion.
Public Information Act is basically making that information available to the public when the police are convicted of crimes. So it's a lot of layers and
You are
moving
doing
parts.
a lot of work though, and I just want to say kudos to you. Kudos to you for being courageous, speaking up, being brave. These are conversations a lot of times that people get uncomfortable talking about. But when it's your son, when it's your child, you feel a lot differently. And not even that, it might be people that, because we have to have allies as well. It's just right is right, equal is equality, what's right is right. And we want to be able to live in a world. I know I do want to be able to live in a world where there is transparency and you do feel safe and you don't feel threatened. I have a Black son, I have a Black husband, a family. I mean, we could go on, but I just want to say kudos to you and the work that you're doing.
And it's
And
about advocacy as well, because you have to teach people that they are able to advocate for themselves
yeah.
in any arena against any entity,
Mhm.
because people don't know what their rights are. And when we don't know what our rights are, that's how they get away with certain things. So I've learned a lot through this process, some things that I did not want to know, but I needed to know. And I needed to know because I have people that message me all the time when they have excessive force encounters with police officers on what can I do, because people don't even know about filing a complaint, not having to report it to internal affairs, but reporting it to the civilian review board, having the ACLU help you and represent you and walk you through this process. So there are a lot of steps that people don't even know about, or they're so afraid of retaliation that they just won't speak up. So
Thank you for sharing this information because it is definitely needed. So to wrap up, how do you think CHWs could fit into a world where they could work with law enforcement, they can work together in the community and there could be this transparency, how could CHWs fit into a plan like that? Because and the reason I asked that, because we're starting to hear of communities where they want to dispatch, whether it be social workers, whether it be people in the community, that as CHWs go out and help people with whether it's mental illness or just basically de-escalate the situation, but they have knowledge on how to do that. So what are your thoughts in CHWs being utilized in a team approach for that?
So just like here at Safe Streets, the people that work for Safe Streets are trusted members of their own community. So we are our best assets. We know each other better than anyone else. So a lot of times outside entities come into our communities and our neighborhoods, and they know nothing about the people that live there.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the day, when the officer walked the beat, he knew everybody in his neighborhood, or she, and vice versa. The neighborhood knew the officer. So we have to get back to people having that position where you are known, you are trusted, and you can be the go-to person and the buffer and the in-between person, because that is very important. Very important. You don't just walk up to strangers and start telling them, hey, you look like you need, I'm gonna give you, wouldn't you like it just doesn't work like that. You haven't asked them what they needed. You haven't had lived experience. You know nothing about them. It's really a level of disrespect. Yeah. So the community health worker is just that. They are the buffer, the in-between person that can bridge these worlds together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely agree. And I hope that we do start to see more of that in our communities, especially with the growth of the field and different bills and policies in different states. I mean, I know that everybody is at a different place with their policies and everything, but I just thank you for sharing this, because I know that your testimony or journey is going to plant some seeds, and it's going to allow people to see things in a different perspective too. So where can people follow you and find out more about the work you do, or any events that y'all have coming up?
Look, a reporter contacted me about the video that I made about SNAP benefits that went missing back in October. He found me from a hashtag and messaged me. So you can catch me on these internet streets, okay? I am Mahogany Butterfly on Instagram. And if you type in my real name, Erica Hamlett, Hamlett, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can message me and I will reach back out to you. If I can help you, I will. And my social media handles are also connected to my Safe Streets handle. I'm at Safe Streets McElderry Park, Safe Streets East Baltimore, here in Baltimore, Maryland. So that's me.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. I appreciate